Okay.
Okay. Good evening, council. I see we have a quorum, and welcome the SLT team that is here, plus a presenter, Tim O'Hara. So tonight, we are not going to sing the national anthem. Instead, I'm just going to read a few words. Thank you to everyone watching our meeting tonight via our live stream. Tonight's meeting is unique in that it is closed to the public, and many of our councilors are participating via Skype. Our senior leadership team is in the building, but not in council chambers, as we keep our commitment to social distancing. As events around the globe unfold, and COVID-19 or coronavirus changes our way of life here in Canada, I would ask everyone to take a moment and reflect on what we can do as individuals and communities to help flatten the curve. I ask you to heed the advice of our scientists and provincial and federal governments. Stay at home if you can, and if you return from being out of the country, to self-isolate for at least 14 days. As a community, we rely on one another for many things. This is no different. We must work together. And please keep in mind that our actions affect more than just ourselves. They affect our family, our neighbors, and our frontline healthcare workers. Please keep everyone in your thoughts, and please follow the advice on social distancing and staying at home. Thank you. Okay, so approval of agenda. Oh, here we go. We have in front of me a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that the agenda for the March 23rd, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted. And before we do that, I have another motion put forward by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. And item 13, new business relating to tax and water penalties during the pandemic, and that bylaw item 14.4, bylaw 4202-2020 be considered following the delegation. Any questions on these amendments? Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I review the agenda, I know that we had made a motion at our last meeting, and of course this agenda was out prior to that, but at our last meeting we decided that, considering that we are in a pandemic, that only really matters that are of urgent nature be discussed and reviewed at this stage of the game. So I think that that's the way we should move forward with this, and I guess I would be looking for a seconder and put that forward as a motion.
So I'm sorry, Councillor. Could you clarify what you're after then, please? Or what your motion is?
At our last meeting, we discussed having only matters of time-sensitive matters, urgent matters, be discussed at our council meeting going forward, and committee of the whole not even tackled. So here we are during a pandemic, and we're talking about items such as rezoning and such, clearly not items of a significant importance during a pandemic. So my thoughts are that only the most urgent items from our agendas be tackled during this time.
Well, I can, before I ask for the vote, I guess the thing that we're trying to do is during this pandemic is to conduct business on as a usual basis as possible. And when something comes to council, it's usually because the people who are bringing it to council, it's an important item for them. So I know that's why we're handling these items as they're coming to council. But as you wish, if you want to put that amendment forward, I will indeed ask for a seconder. Is there a seconder on, yes, I see Councillor Corr is seconding it. Is there any debate on this? Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor Hahn, you're just asking to go through the regular council agenda and defer the committee of the whole?
Defer the committee of the whole and any items that are on here that are not of a time-sensitive matter. So clearly, cannabis control would be, and there's some other items that clearly I can see are of a time-sensitive nature, but there's other items on here that simply are not. And as people are fearful for their health right now, and we are in a pandemic, it seems a little trivial to be talking about items that are rezoning and things such as that probably in the bigger scheme of things won't even be able to be acted on for at least the next few weeks, if not months. So I think it's just important in this particular stage of the game that we keep in mind that we're in a pandemic. This is not necessarily business as usual, as the mayor might suggest. This is, in fact, this is a time where we really should be thinking of what we can do here in Pelham to help people that are affected by the pandemic and businesses that are affected by the pandemic. That, I think, is what my constituents would want me to address at this particular juncture, is how to keep them safe, and other items that, of course, have been pressing and have been long in the tooth, i.e. A lot of work's been done on CCC, so of course they want to see that go through. But other items that are new to us or just coming to us for the first time, I have to think that as we go through this, we really evaluate some of those items really pressing.
Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I kind of agree with Councillor Hahn, but are we going to have to itemize the agenda, what we're going to remove, if we're going to go this route? Mr.
2 weeks ago when we made this agenda, we thought all of these things mattered, and to an extent they all do. They have thought behind them. Almost all of them have money behind them at some point in time, and impacts on the community. If I can be so bold, we have an agenda this evening. We didn't, when we drafted last week's reasons, we didn't know if we'd be able to even meet a quorum tonight. And I can't tell you that you're going to meet a quorum April 6th or that you're going to meet on April 6th, which is the next meeting, if that so pleases council. Perhaps what we could do is, if this motion passes, we can use that as a guidance for future agendas, but you have an agenda tonight, you're seem more or less capable of addressing the agenda. I mean, it's quite lengthy, but if we go forward, if there are any matters you don't wish to address either tonight or you wish to defer, you have that power. You always do, frankly. Move second and defer to April 6th, to sometime there, to May, to June, you pick. So not for me to tell you, but you do already have that power. I understand exactly where Councillor Hans and Councillor Corr are coming from, so I understand why we don't have too much that's pandemic on this COVID-19 related tonight, other than the walk-on pertaining to the deferral of interest and penalties on some payments. We have that ready for you. It'll be at least, so the next time around you have anything like that, it'll be April 6th, and we'll have more related to that, the pandemic topic, surely, for the next agenda. But right now, we do have some routine corporate business, and the only way this corporation, if you remove the community from the equation for a moment, sometimes you also do things on behalf of the corporation. The only way the corporation actually can move forward is when council approves things. So there's some corporate work here too, which has its own time and place. So I certainly don't pass this motion if you wish, and we will use that as a measuring stick for what goes on future agendas. But for tonight, you've already got one approved. Well, you're about to approve it, I think. And you can address most of your agenda this evening, and items you can't. That's a very good North Star to use as a guiding principle for how far something gets deferred, if it's time sensitive or actually has a major impact on the community. If not, we'll push it well to the back, and when we start up, when this too shall pass, we'll come at it then.
Any other comments on the agenda or on the amendment? Not seeing any, I will call the vote. All those in favor of Councillor Hahn's amendment, raise your hands. All those against, Motion carries. So, Madam Clerk or Mr. CAO, so as we come up to each individual item, we had, as you stated, we had the power to defer before. So please enlighten council.
May I suggest that as you get to any item, if it takes at least two of you to agree that something's at least challengeable under that parameter, someone bring a motion, say, I'd like to defer this item. If four of you ultimately are in agreement with that, the item gets deferred to a future agenda. If four of you do not, we hear it.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, have you added that to this, that amendment to this agenda?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have it recorded. I was also experiencing some technical difficulties on the live stream, so I have that as best I can. You do have a motion for amending the agenda on the floor right now, and then the agenda as amended, and then as the CAO has suggested, item by item.
Okay. So we voted on Councillor Hahn's amendment,
Yes.
so we still have to vote on these other two.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So we still have to vote on item 13, and then also on that bylaw item 4.4, bylaw 4202, be considered following the delegation. Is there any discussion on these two amendments? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Oh, the amendment carries. So now we go back to the original motion. Oh,
That's it as amended.
I'm sorry?
That's what you're voting on now as
Yeah.
amended.
Okay. So now we're voting motion again put forward by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that the agenda for the March 23rd, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended. Any discussion? Not seeing any. I ask for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're going to call for pecuniary interest. Pecuniary interest.
And after looking at the agenda, does any council member have to declare a pecuniary interest or nature thereof? Not seeing any, I ask the clerk to please note that. Now we, presentation, and it's Tim. Presentation now be put forward by the chairman of the Cannabis Control Committee, Tim O'Hara. Tim, if you approach the microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's on.
Is the button up?
Is that better?
That's better.
All right. Good evening. So I'm here before you tonight. I don't have materials. You have them before you. And it's concerning the approval of the odorous industries nuisance bylaw that the Cannabis Control Committee is bringing before you this evening. Maybe I could just speak for a few minutes on what brings us here specifically tonight, how we got here. Back in February, we brought an earlier version of this bylaw to you, and at that time, there were some letters we had received from local cannabis producer lawyers on it. It was the direction of council to take back the bylaw, work with our legal advisors, Aird and Burles, and make revisions, and as we saw appropriate, and bring that back to you. We have done so, and it has been a good exercise. Things have changed significantly since we were here before, and I might highlight those for you. They are discussed in the revised recommendation report that is before you, but I'll give you a quick summary. So the first thing we did was we simplified the bylaw. Now it only deals with odor. Previously, it had included light, it had included noise. There were some concerns raised about the definition of adverse effect, which included things like property value, loss, traffic, garbage. So there were a number of related, let me call them nuisance items, that were taken out of the definition of adverse effect and simplified. And so now the focus is specifically odor. Maybe just underlying the justification for that adverse effect, and actually one specific letter that we received pointed this out. It was their preference, if you will. It has a definition under the Environmental Protection Act, and what we had done was we took that list, that definition originally, we took a public nuisance definition that came out of the Municipal Act, and we brought those together into our own definition. So we have now broken those apart so that they are much like they are stated explicitly in the various acts. And what that does is it helps with defensibility and maybe with some confusion as to what it actually means, because we're using the language explicitly from the various acts. So we thank you for making our Aaron list available to us. There were additional recommendations that came from staff. They had certain concerns that we addressed, from bylaw enforcement that we addressed. So I think what you have before you tonight is a very straightforward odorous industries nuisance bylaw. It does still reach to heavy odor industries, so it's not just cannabis, it's the other types of industries that generate heavy odor. These are already regulated, these other industries, so it does reach to them. And in our recent council meeting, I know there's a separate initiative to deal with light. So it's not that light is gone, it's that light is gone from this nuisance bylaw to be treated elsewhere under another framework. So that's sort of, we've also enhanced greatly, we meaning our lawyers have enhanced greatly, the recitals. The recitals have been changed extensively, and what they deal with are how to actually make direct reference to the various acts that our enforcement provisions rely upon. So that has been changed significantly, improved. Also, I think we've clarified some ambiguities maybe that were of concern in the enforcement section at the end of the bylaw. I think finally the last thing that maybe has some substance in terms of changes in the odorous industries nuisance bylaw is we defined a minimum size cannabis micro producer, 50 square meter. So think of that as a very small greenhouse maybe. And what we've done is if you're 50 square meters or less, you're not required to provide a contingency odor mitigation plan, and you're not required to pay for the outdoor ambient odor monitoring program. And that was on recommendation, again, for burden on a very small, potentially a designated grower, a very small micro license. It would also potentially protect us from constitutional challenge. So I think that's the extent of the improvements that we've made to the bylaw. To the report itself, we have described those changes. We have clarified some language. There were some comments previously about it wasn't complete, or there were sections that said to be completed. We've clarified those. It wasn't that they were forgotten. It's we intend to use the format of that recommendation report as we bring forward the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments that we're working on presently. And we will update those sections when those amendments are ready to bring to you, to policy and priorities, or to you. So, so we've corrected, we've improved the format. There were also some concerns that were raised about not acknowledging some of the efforts that have already been undertaken by existing cannabis producers. We've created a separate section for that. I believe it's section 232. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a separate section now where we have acknowledged those efforts and have also addressed in the report other areas that were pointed out to us that maybe were misunderstood, maybe the language was a bit ambiguous, and maybe it was incorrect. We've done our best to fix those. We're now here before you, having had our external legal counsel, Aaron Burles, fully review what is before you. So we're now here before you to ask for your consideration and approval. Again, this is our first installment. It's our last line of defense. It's what we use when we are having adverse effects in our community. It's an enforcement tool to use for then. We are now focused already on the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, which are proactive, which are our first line of defense, and those certainly will relate to any new cannabis desiring to move into our town. So back to you if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Tim. Any councillor have questions, comments to Mr. O'Hara? Tim, I just want to, as mayor, thank you and your committee once again for your unbelievable hours that you guys have put into this document. Maybe it's didn't come forward maybe quite as quick as the CC wanted to, but let's face it, you've got a pretty good document here, a very good document, in fact, and the community, along with council, thanks you for your time and effort that you guys took to do this. Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of them all. Thank you. I know they're watching.
Okay, and Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to either Tim or the CAO. Several months ago, CanTrust lost their license. Are they considered a grower in our community after losing their license?
To the best of my knowledge, they are.
But if the federal government took their license away, I just want to know that question is why we're dealing with them when they basically are not a grower right now. They legally they can't grow, so they're not a grower.
This evening, we're not here to address any specific corporation. We are here to look at whether an odorous industry bylaw that addresses multiple industries, one of which is cannabis, suits the needs of the residents of Pelham. And I think the Cannabis Control Committee has put forward a document that may well do so.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, could we get information on that? Could council or senior staff get back to us on that? Question?
I think we can, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. There's been some letters being circulated out that there is no urgency that the bylaw be considered and potentially passed this evening, and certainly does not constitute as a mandatory item during this time of pandemic event. Even the third draft report of the Cannabis Control Committee, CCC, recognizes the efforts of the licensed local cannabis producers to reduce adverse effects of odor and light. I think that's absolutely the opposite. Right now, everybody with this self-isolation and staying home, not going anywhere, the good weather's coming out, this is actually playing into more of an adverse effect. I think it really needs to be passed this evening, and I want to put a motion forward that the council receives this delegation and recommend to approve the odorous industry nuisance bylaw this evening.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
I have that already made.
Okay. Okay, and seconded by Councillor Kaur.
Let me just change the seconder on that. I just want to change the seconder.
Okay, we can still count, debate, I can ask other comments on this, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this was just to receive the delegation. This motion was already prepared to receive the delegation, as was noted by the councillor.
Okay, thank you. Before we move this, let's, first of all, is there any other comments by any of the other councillors? on this, especially on the presentation? Okay, not seeing any, thank you. Thank you, Tim. So then we have here, be it resolved that council receive the delegation by Tim Nora, Chair, Cannabis Control Committee, and that council consider the committee recommendation to approve the odorous industries nuisance bylaw as presented on the agenda for March 23rd, 2020 at item number 14. Okay, any other questions or comments? Councillor Corey?
Could we have a recorded vote?
Yes. Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, I just can't stress how important it is. Like this past weekend, the weather was very nice and sunny. It was cool out, but I received 3 emails of people complaining about the odor, and they weren't directly to me. They were just copied to me, and I actually shared them with staff as well and bylaw, just so everybody's aware of what's happening in our community. And I just want to stress, like, people are home now, people are in their backyards, the good weather's coming. It is very important that we pass this. It's not something that can wait 2, 3, 4, 5 months.
Thank you. So if I have, the only question I have is that part of the bylaw, a great part of the bylaw, is indeed in testing for odors. We don't have an odor machine right now, and we don't know how we're going to pay for the odor or for the whole system. So I believe sometime tonight, and I'll talk to this CEO can clarify this, someone has got to put forward a motion asking for a staff report to address these, if not shortcomings, then things that have to be corrected as we go into the enforcement phase of the bylaw. I'm just throwing it out there. Mr. CEO, do you want to perhaps comment on that?
Yes, I'd be pleased to. The bylaw as presented is a coherent document that's fairly well thought out and establishes a regime that, at least from my vantage point, seems to make a lot of sense. So in and of itself, it's a good work product. The law of unintended consequences, I suppose, or the next step to flow from that, not so much unintended consequence, is that the town has to look, assuming that this meets with your approval this evening. So if you pass this bylaw, then presumably you also want to direct staff to come back to you with a report indicating, talking about money, what we might need, looking at the logic of the bylaw is such that it would create a regulatory regime involving testing for odor, and that in turn would require payment of fees. So that we have to make amendments to a fees and schedule bylaw. We have to come up with a rationale for a costing, et cetera, et cetera. So if council elects to pass this bylaw as proposed this evening, then the time it would take to come back with some advice on how to do the other pieces around it, and then enact those, again, assuming those meet with your approval, sort of gives essentially a grace period, if you will, which is a regular occurrence at any rate when one introduces new regulatory regulations. You usually give those parties impacted by them some period of time to adjust. So it's sort of it would sort of create a routinely desirable goal at any rate. So assuming you pass this bylaw, I have no idea how you'll vote, but if you do vote in the affirmative, it would then be my advice to you that you also direct staff through my office to return with a report. Feel free to pick a date if you wish, or under the current circumstances, perhaps a month or 2 month period is a better way to go. And I'm not trying to be funny about that. I'm unclear as to what exactly our right now. I know what our capacity to respond is today, and today we could put full complement on that task. I don't know what that looks like next week even, but at the moment I know we could. So you would want to hear from us with some recommendations that will, I know right now, will involve spending money, if nothing else, for the technology, but also to create a regime to license others and require payment of fees to effectively to fund the testing that this bylaw contemplates. So that would be step 2, assuming that the bylaw is acceptable unto you. Thank you.
Thank you. And, Councilor Sophie?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think number 15 in the draft bylaw, the bylaw shall take effect in force in 90 days, which would be 3 months. And I know there's been a lot of work done by senior staff in looking at the nasal rangers and et cetera, and we'd have to get the second part of the odor monitoring system going. So if this were to pass this evening, I think if we gave staff a month to look into the rest of it, then that'll allow us 2 more months to start implementing things. So we put in a 3-month in there. It's in the number 15, if that'd be acceptable to you, Mr. CAO.
A month is, sorry, Madam Clerk, after April 6th, what's the next theoretical meeting date for this body? The 20th?
The 20th, and then following that is May the 4th.
Once I say a date, of course, then I'm sort of publicly committed. One of those 2 dates is realistic, depending on, obviously, there are a lot of moving pieces right now, but I'm sure we can come back on one of those 2 dates with something, with some concrete ideas and proposals and outlines for you. If you pass the bylaw, if it is the will of council that this is appropriate, then you could, in the alternative, direct us to proceed with the purchase of some technology ahead of time. We don't have any budget money, so you'd have to direct spending that would, in theory, meet with your approval. But we could do that quite apart from, they're sort of 2 separate items, right, that would conjunctively form one report. If you wanted us to get moving on the purchase, you'd have to instruct us in the positive this evening and also instruct us to spend money that isn't currently, that's not a non-stopper, obviously, but that is necessary.
Thank you. Council?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we'll see how the vote goes first, and then if it goes the way yes, then we'll put a motion forward to look at the nasal ranger and et cetera. We've already looked at that, and just so we're specific, I think the cost when we were talking about it in our meetings was around $2,500 to $3,000 for one of those units.
It's closer to 5,000.
5,000? Okay. Okay. So anyways, we'll see how the vote goes, and then we'll move from there. But my last question would be, do you think the 3-month period to get everything ready for this is acceptable, doable? And you've been doing this for some time now?
Under normal circumstances, I would agree that a 90-day window is it might be strong, but is within the bounds of reason. I don't know. We understand that earlier today the Premier announced he doesn't have the entire list of businesses or of industries that are to be shut down. We'll get that tomorrow. But that essentially most commerce is being ordered to a standstill at midnight tomorrow. I don't know if that's going to apply to cannabis companies. I couldn't tell you. So if your compliance time includes weeks or months where you're ordered shut down by government, then you have to surely, out of procedural fairness, you have to add that on the back end. I could answer this question better this time tomorrow than I can right now, but 90 days plus, that doesn't count shutdown time, would be a fair answer to you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Jason has a comment.
Jason, did you have a comment, please? Director of Public Works?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I've been informed through Chief Limburner that he does have a budget of $13,000 that would be attributed to this cause.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so right now we have a motion on the floor, so let's get that out of the way first, and then we'll come back to this other one that we're discussing. So be it resolved that council receive the delegation by Tim Nora, Chair, Cannabis Control Committee, and that council consider the committee recommendation to approve the odorous industries nuisance bylaw as presented on the agenda from March 23rd, 2020 at item number 14. Any more?
There was a request for a recorded vote.
Oh, yeah. Oh, but before I do that, is there any other counselor, any other comments or questions? Before I turn it over to the clerk for a recorded vote. Councilor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, there was concern before that this bylaw would, in effect, have an issue with respect to the proposed zoning bylaws. Is that still an issue going forward?
This bylaw has changed dramatically since its first iteration. I think the CCC has in fact proven itself to take seriously the concerns of all parties. Cannabis companies have made submissions. I don't know if direct members of the public have, certainly staff have, and external legal counsel has. And as those positions have been iterated to the CCC, it has fairly significantly altered and evolved the bylaw. At the end of the day, the only answer, I cannot give you an answer with absolute certainty because the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and in this case, the proof of the pudding's in a challenge in the Superior Court of Justice or at the LPAT, depending how one phrases the case. So at the end of the day, only a judge or board member or tribunal member is going to be able to give you absolute certainty, but this doesn't obviously offend those sensibilities, and I think is a reasonably coherent attempt to try to address the issue of odor that the town has been experiencing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Not seeing any, I will turn it over to the clerk for the recorded vote.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to remind the members that this is to receive the delegation and their recommendation to consider the bylaw. This is not a vote on the bylaw. That will come next on the agenda. Okay? So I have a recorded vote. Councillor Cholfie.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The vote carries.
Thank you.
So this and this.
Okay, and that's the last two. Okay. Motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Trophy. Presentation and consideration of bylaws. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1, Bylaw 4208, 2020. Oh,
No, we're just going to
Oh.
the cannabis bylaw right now, which
oh,
is this one.
sorry. Okay, so we miss a few and we come to this one. Number 4, Bylaw 4202, being a bylaw to regulate certain matters and nuisances related to odorous industrial facilities. And that's the only one? Yes. Any talk or questions on this bylaw? Not, Council Trophy?
Yes, can we have a recorded vote on this as well, please?
Any other discussion? Not seeing any, I will ask the clerk to conduct a recorded vote.
So members of council, this is for the odorous industries bylaw. Councillor Cholfi,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes?
The vote carries. Thank you. So now moving on with the agenda.
Oh, now we're going to do the
Through you, Mr. Mayor. should-
that's Council Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, should I wait under new business to, for the nasal ranger to approve? We know there's $13,000 in the budget, or do it now?
Well, I'll confess to being unaware that we had $13,000 in the budget. So, given that we have that money, if you were to pass a motion directing staff to write you a report proposing a mechanism or methodology, a process for council to consider as far as licensing, regulation, fees and charges, we could produce that work for you based on what I know now, but our current operational capacity, and call it late April, and very early May if I'm wrong.
So are we doing that in new business then, Mr. CAO?
I would do it now, and I simply submit that because I suspect we have fairly high viewership online right now, and I think that's at least partially because of this item. And so that those who are only interested in cannabis can see it all dealt with at once and sign out, and those who have interest in all things municipal can carry on watching.
Do you need a motion, or have you made one?
I have
You have one?
I have a mover and a motion.
Okay, so right now we have a mover, and Council Kaur, you're going to second that?
Yes, I just have a question.
Yes.
Now, would that include training of the employee on using this equipment? So I presume it's going to take a while for this individual or a couple individuals to be able to be efficient on this equipment.
The direction my office is going to take, which in turn will bind other staff, is that you are, although you're asking us to write you a report, you're also instructing us to move ahead with the purchase of the technology. The technology purchase comes with training. I don't know if that requires a physical training presence or if that can be done online or whatever. So that may, with coronavirus, I mean, I can't tell you what that takes exactly, but we will proceed down that alley so as to reduce delay as much as possible. And then write the report on the other parts. That's the direction I would take unless council tells me I'm wrong.
Thank you.
Council Trophy?
No, I think that's correct, but I think the director of planning might have some more information on what comes with the trainings. I know they were investigating these devices, her and the senior planner, and I believe from what I'm hearing that they do come with training, correct?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, there is training available through the company, and it can be either in person or online. And the training is over a number of days, so we'll take a look at that. Obviously, there is a price for purchasing the unit, and then there is a price for the training.
Thank you.
And if I may ask, but while you're still at the microphone, please. So are we 100% positive, like as any machine, as in any device, there must be 1, 2, 5 of these on the marketplace. So perhaps do we know that this is the machine we want, or is there indeed other items, other machines, machines, not the word I'm looking for, other devices that we should be looking at? Or what's your take on that, Madame?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, staff have done quite a bit of research on various types of equipment. And so the one that Councillor Cholfi referred to is known in the industry as the nasal ranger. That's been used in other jurisdictions that are monitoring cannabis, particularly in different places in the United States. It's also used in other industries in terms of measuring odor, and so we know that that is an effective piece of equipment to take measurements, and it's being tested both in the courts, not within the courts in Canada, but in the courts in the United States.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any other questions from any councillors? Not seeing any, then perhaps the clerk has a motion.
Yes, thank you. Moved by Councillor Cholfi, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council direct staff to prepare a report regarding the mechanism, methodology, process, and purchase of technology regarding licensing, regulations, fees, and charges for implementation of the odorous industries bylaw.
Any questions, comments on this motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Motion put forward by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Excuse me. Be resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1C-04 2020, regular council minutes, March 2nd, 2020. Number 2, special council -03/2020, special council meetings, February 24th, 2020. And number 3, special council -04 2020, special council minutes, March 2nd, 2020. Any comments, questions? Not seeing any, call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
It's request to lift.
On me?
Any
Oh.
request to
yeah.
lift consent agenda? Item 8.
Yep, so we're at the request to lift consent agenda items. That'll be anywhere from 9.1 to 10. Any councillor have any items that they would like to lift? Not seeing any. Okay. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the March 23rd, 2020 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. And I just all the vote. Yep. Not seeing any comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. (11.2.1) zoning bylaw amendment, 695 Quaker Road, recommendation report. Be resolved that council receive report number 2020-0040, planning for information as it pertains to zoning bylaw amendment application file number AM-09-19, 695 Quaker Road, and recommend that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix D, amending the zoning of 695 Quaker Road. Any comment or discussions on this? Councillor Kaur.
Yes, could we have that bylaw deferred?
Yes. And does he need a seconder on that?
Yes.
Yes. And is there a seconder on that? Yes. And we'll vote. Any discussion? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just need to know who you're recognizing as the second.
The seconder is Trophy.
Councillor Cholfi.
Councillor Trophy, yes. Okay. Any comments on this particular item Before I call the vote, not seeing the vote, all those in favor of deferral? All those against? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, do we have to put a date on the referring or just?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can we make the presumption that anything that is deferred would come back at the end of the crisis?
Okay. Council okay with that limitation?
I agree with that.
Okay, that's what it is. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Motion 2020 Gypsy, I'm sorry, motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that council receive report number 2020-0039 for information, and that council consider amending bylaw number 4106-2019 to allow for the implementation of an aerial spray program in 2020, and that the blocks identified in report number 2020-0039 be aerially sprayed for the gypsy moth in 2020, and that the town holds 2 public open houses to communicate the spray blocks and address the concerns of residents with respect to the gypsy moth during the month of April. Comment and questions on this report. Councillor Corr.
Yes, I have a question to the director. What is the percentage of what we're spraying throughout our community? 10%, 20%? You have 2 blocks. What does that consist of in our community?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, percentage-wise, I don't have a number handy. I do know that there are 12,000 hectares in the town of Pelham, and we are spraying about 120 hectares.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is that more than we did last year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the spray program that the town will be conducting this year is twice as large as it was last year. We're planning on doing close to 120 hectares, and last year our program was about 60 hectares in total.
Thank you. I saw lots of hands. Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. It does say and that the town will hold 2 public open houses to communicate the spray blocks and address the concerns of the residents with respect to the gypsy moth during the month of April. April 14th and April 17th are scheduled in. Looking at where we are today, I know this report was done before that. Is there any plans, or how are we going to get this communication out to the people? And because the spraying must go on, I would, at the end of May, early June, and it's important that the residents of Pelham are aware of what's happening.
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so that's correct. This report was done prior to last week's events. So what I'm proposing is that we would substitute 2 public meetings with an online interactive Q&A type of forum. We would present on our website on a dedicated page what the spray zones are, who will be sprayed, who won't be, along with our FAQs and our educational information. We'll open that up to questions that we can receive from the public, and then we'll respond to those questions through email and make those public so that everybody can see those questions and answers.
Thank you, that's good. Sorry, I got one more part, sorry. In the section here under, just under financial considerations, it says a technical report including the post-aerial spray efficiency assessment and defoliation surveys of host species once feeding has ceased will be presented to council for consideration in preparation for the 2021 budget process. Can we set a time frame on that? Last year, we were hoping to do the same thing, and then we got a little bit past on that. I just want to ensure that we have everything that we know we require in order to set the budget.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, This particular item is part of the work that Bioforest, Law Inc. would be completing for us as part of their assignment. This will include a post-spray assessment immediately after the spray is completed. So this will help us develop, this is information we didn't have last year. So this will help us better forecast what the requirement will be in 2021. We will still need to go ahead and complete those infestation surveys, but those cannot be completed until the leaves drop and you have clear visual on the trees themselves. So that will still take place. That program will still take place. And we're, because of the budget that's in place this year, if you recall, we brought forward a report that was saying, let's defer the funding for that infestation survey in January of 2021. So that's basically on the same timeline that we completed it this year. And as long as we're set up to go and have budget approval, we'll be able to proceed with that in January in preparation of the 2021 program.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand, I saw your hand up.
Councillor Chofee's questions were the ones I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, if I recall, originally we were to spray all municipalities' properties, and that was around, give or take, 34 hectares. When I look at the spray blocks that are being presented to us at this point in time, it doesn't appear that any of the municipal properties are going to be sprayed. So could the director comment on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Those reports that we presented to council previously, we did not have the information with respect to the, we had the infestation surveys, but we didn't sit down as a group to develop the spray zones and the spray blocks. So just happens after we did do that, went through that process, we've identified municipally owned town parks that were severely infested, and we increased the threshold that we looked at to over 5,000 egg masses per hectare for those areas. We will be spraying. We've done a rough calculation. There are roughly 14 hectares of property that will be sprayed, municipal property that will be sprayed, and that will include parks such as Hillcrest Park. There is an additional 19 hectares of municipally owned property along road right-of-ways, which will be sprayed as well as part of the program. Just coincidentally, it turned out that when we went through the process that yes, municipally owned land, which would include town parks and trail systems and the limits within the right-of-way that the town owns, turns out to be 33 hectares. And there will be roughly 86 hectares of private property that's being sprayed, which is almost, well, it is double what it was sprayed last year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hahn, did I see your hand?
Yes, through you. The director, and I'm not sure if the communications person as well, Mark, is in the room, but perhaps you can just discuss a little bit about the communications plan. I just want to make sure that communications to folks, what that looks like, but also too that they're very cognizant of the fact that not everyone will have online access. So making our plan able to be seen by those people that don't necessarily have computers. Can you speak to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our communications person is not in the room with us tonight, but through email, I have discussed with him, and yes, I was absent-minded and not saying that we will also post advertisements in the newspapers. We'll have paper handouts that we can give to people, as well as part of our program, as part of our communication program through social media, through our website, through the local papers, through signage that will be displayed on roads indicating when the program will take place. We will also directly reach out to individual property owners that are going to be sprayed, and then those that are going to be adjacent to the spray zone, so that they know what the details are of the program. But obviously, without having the open houses, and the plan's not 100% set yet, but the idea is that we get this information out to all the property owners within the town of Pelham, so that if they're not part of those spray zones, that they're able to take whatever measures they need to protect their own property. And as part of the information that we put together and distribute, we'll also be directing residents to other resources that they can look into to help protect their properties and their trees.
Further to that, so last year when we sprayed, I had quite a few folks in my area that were not pleased with the fact that the handouts, I guess, that were delivered, sometimes if they have a mail box that they have to go into town to get mail, and instead, I guess, the leaflets were left in the attachment to their home, which they don't open very often, so they felt that they didn't, get the awareness that they should have gotten prior to spray falling from the sky. So that being said, will we also send out a mailer via mail, or will it only be you knock at the door, if no one answers, then it's a leaflet left at the doorstep in conjunction with the newspapers and the others that you mentioned?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess in speaking in general terms, the way this is normally handled with respect to notifying residents of construction projects that are on their roadways or adjacent to the roadways is to hand deliver notices. It seems to be best practices and the most effective way to communicate the information. With respect to the issues surrounding the COVID-19 virus right now, whether or not we're still working through this. Whether or not we want to hand deliver notices, that's something we need to consider. I will be taking that to our communications personnel as well as our director of corporate services to look at what the best option of getting that information out, whether it's hand delivered or whether it's mailed through the mail. So,
right, and I would definitely opt for the mail option anyhow, because then people more certainty they're going to actually get it, and then of course it reduces the risk of someone knocking at a door. The virus is still with us. So yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? I would just like to comment on the fact that this year the Director of Public Works sat down in the room with Zimmer Air, the owner of Zimmer Air, and by taking that step, we were able to do a better job than we did last year of mapping out the blocks. We got efficient use of the helicopter, and that is one reason I believe, and Director, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we were able to spray more. We got bigger bang for our buck having him in the room. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we had information this year, which we didn't last year. So the scientific data to back up where the infestations were the worst within the town. And then being able to sit down at the same table with the applicator as well as the consultant that did the infestation surveys and town staff, we're able to map out efficient spray blocks, which also targeted the most infested areas within the town. So that's how we went through the process. And to value for money, yes, last year we were around $650 per acre for spraying urban land. And in this year, we're down around $360 per acre.
Thank you for that. Councilor Trophy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Let's say there's still some severe areas throughout Pelham here, and residents would like to spray that area. Will they be going through the town like we did last year, or they do deal direct with Zimmer Air?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they won't necessarily be directly working through the town. We'll have a contract in place with Zimmer Air and as well as Bioforest to complete some of the management of the program. But we will stick strictly to our program. I do believe there are other companies that are going to be implementing spray programs of their own. So there will be an opportunity there for residents to join an alternate spray program. So we haven't finalized exactly who that is yet, but we will, as staff, direct people in the right direction so that they can properly protect their properties.
When you say additional contractors, would that be from the ground or more aerial spraying? Aerial.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's certain contractors that will do ground spraying. We have confirmed there is only one contractor in Eastern Canada that is able to spray aerially with a twin engine helicopters, which is what you require for urban spraying. So that contractor, aerial spray contractor, may work with other firms that are developing spray programs and will incorporate that into, they'll probably do both programs at the same time.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this program? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director of Public Works. Thank you. Motion put forward by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be resolved that Council receive and approve report number 2020-0044 Public Works, and that Council endorse the proposed recommendations from town staff regarding the Town of Pelham's enhanced and optional enhanced waste collection services for the Niagara Region's new waste management collection contract. And that Niagara Region be advised that the Town of Pelham requests to continue with its current enhanced services as follows. 1, 2 days per week for public space litter bin and public space recycling bin collection inside designated business areas, and 1 day per week for public space litter bin and public space recycling bin collection outside the DBAs at an annual estimated cost of $18,825.60, including net HST. Number 2, containerized garbage collection, containerized garbage collection at multi-residential buildings and municipal facilities at an annual estimated cost of $14,195.52, including net HST, and that Niagara Region be advised that the Town of Pelham is not interested in the optional enhanced services of bulky goods collection at MR buildings with 7 or more units and mixed-use properties with 1 or more residential unit at an annual estimated cost of $41,009.28, including net HST, and in-ground collection at municipal facilities, i.e. Town Hall, the Meridian Community Center, and Centennial Park, at an estimated cost of $122.11 plus HST per receptacle stop for crane collection, and that Council endorse the recommendation from town staff to continue with the town's existing in-ground collection service provider until further investigation on alternative in-ground collection services are explored. Questions or comments on this motion? Councillor Chofie.
I just have a question in regards to Appendix 2 in that section there. And it has the garbage breakdown there for recycle, waste, cardboard, and organics between Centennial Park, Town Hall, and the MCC. It just seems like the MCC is really, like, the total for the MCC is $14,683.50. I'm not, if the Director of Public Works or the Director of Wellness, who's there every day, would know, the most of that garbage, where would it be coming from? Is it has to do with the canteen and the catering, or is it just everyday garbage? Like, that just seems like so much more than Town Hall, and there are probably more people working here than there is over there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is. I know that there are garbage bins and recycling bins located within the MCC. Items are disposed into those bins. Town staff collect those bins and take that and put those into the proper in-ground containerized system, the Moloch. I'm not sure exactly if we have a breakdown with respect to what comes from different areas within that building or functions within that building.
Is there a program in place where the renter or anybody like that would be responsible for their garbage, or is all garbage that comes out of there just going to the taxpayers of Pelham? It just seems like a huge amount there compared to Centennial Park and Town Hall.
If I may, the numbers are accurate. The town staff is almost perfectly divided, a third MCC, a third this building, a third out in Tice. Works down almost to the person, frankly. So assuming staff everywhere or eat about the same amount and produce about the same amount of waste, more or less, that's neutral. The difference is, here's Ms. Van Ravensway. The answer I want to end on, though, is that the town doesn't have days when we have 2,000 members of the public coming through, or 3,000 or 3,500. The MCC has hit on a number of occasions. And even when we do have hundreds of members of the public come through, they don't stay for 5 hours, 6 hours watching 2 hockey games or a child skating and then themselves doing something in one of the gyms or what have you. So the duration of the visits are much longer at the MCC as well. This is in line with other municipalities. We expect the MCC to produce far more waste than either Tice Road or this building ever could, by orders of magnitude, in fact.
I appreciate that answer, and I would expect that facility would produce more waste as well. But from $14,683 to $782, I'm just concerned that the taxpayers are paying for subcontractors' garbage too. I just want to ensure that we have a policy in place that if they're going to be a contractor, that they're taking care of their own waste, cardboard from supplies, anything like that, because there's several events. I know the catering takes place there, and there's well over 100 events that have taken place. So I just want to ensure that the taxpayers aren't paying for the garbage disposal.
Sorry, I do take your point, Councillor Chofie. In future years, we'll be renegotiating all of our current contracts. Waste is supposed to be calculated in the value of a contract a landlord has with a tenant, and that's part and parcel of it. So in theory, that's factored in, and certainly will be into the future. Thank you.
Madam Director of Wellness and Recreation, it's your building. Do you have anything else to add?
Well, actually, our CAO did answer the question the way I would have. We do have thousands of people coming in the building after a weekend. At times, if we have a tournament, we actually have to have 2 pickups. That's the amount of garbage. It's waste is huge, and we need to look at ways of eliminating the waste that is being collected in the future, and we are looking at different ways of offsetting costs as well.
Thank you, Madam Director. Councilor Chofie.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one simple question then. Out of all the catering events that we have there, and there's been several of them from different people, is the garbage the town's responsibility, or the caterer take their own garbage out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is the town's responsibility. That's the way it has been.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hildebrand, I see you've had your hand up. Would you like to speak to the issue?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I'm at the MCC a lot, and I've noticed when they have a hockey tournament and a basketball tournament, the director of recreation is correct. There's so much garbage that's produced by the people there, and I'm not sure where it's all coming from, that there's not enough room in the Moloch system to absorb that amount of garbage. It's amazing how those there's that much capacity in terms of waste produced by these people that come there. I'm not sure where it's all coming from, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Court?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. Wouldn't that garbage or waste come from the canteen or the vendors that are in our building? Because I can't see people bringing in food. I could see them buying hot dogs, chips, popcorn, and then they just leave it where you guys have to pick it up later. So basically, I would say about 80% of that is coming from the vendors that are in our building.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you would think that as well. I know that we have many teams, like for instance, the basketball teams that come in. We actually see families bring in coolers of food in between games because they're there for the day. They would enjoy their food throughout the building, as well as many times we've had the area businesses want to make sure that we advise them when we have events because they sell out. So food is actually being brought in as well. I would say the majority of food is being brought in to the facility.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. Oh.
Councillor Wink.
Sorry, Councillor Wink, go ahead.
That's okay. Just a question for the director. Under B, it says containerized garbage collection at multi-residential buildings and municipal facilities. Why are we providing collection to just 3 multi-residential buildings in town and not everyone else? Why are they an exception?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this was an agreement that was set in place. It's been in place for some time now that the region collects their garbage. That's basically the long and short of it, is that there's been previous agreements in place with respect to this, and that's the agreements that they have with the town.
So the unit owners, the residential unit owners have an agreement with the town?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I believe that's the case.
So are they being charged extra on their taxes for this privilege?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, they are not being charged a separate tax levy for that service.
So any reason why the town's paying for it and not the property owners?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, like I said, this is a previous agreements that were in place, agreements between the town and those property owners. There's been no changes to date, and basically that's that's the way things are.
Well, so I would make a recommendation to staff that they look into this, because I don't feel that it's equitable that they're getting provided this service and not every other multi-residential building owner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff can definitely take this back and look into what can be done with respect to providing some type of fee for the service for these properties.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, I would like to ask staff if they can go back and see when this agreement comes due as well, so we can get a hand on this one. We don't lose sight of it.
Okay, any other questions for the director? Not seeing any, I will call the vote. I've already read it. All those in favor of this agreement? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
So this is the bylaws.
Yeah.
You need a motion to defer that one, and this one's already been dealt with.
Okay,
Okay, so you need a motion to defer that one because the report was deferred.
okay. So, should I read them all and then go back? Or do you want to do that defer first?
Ask if council wants to make a motion to defer and then read the
Okay.
rest of them.
Okay, so we have a presentation and consideration of bylaws, but we deferred the Quaker Road. So now I need a motion, and that motion was put forward by Councilor Corr and Councilor Trophy. So now I need a motion to defer this bylaw. So if I could have a motion put forward. Okay, Councilor Corr, seconded by Councilor Trophy. So we would defer that.
Vote on that. You need to vote on deferring that.
Yeah, pardon me?
You need to vote on
Oh, yeah. So on that deferral put forward by Councilor Corr and Councilor Trophy, we please have a vote on that. All those in favor of the deferral? Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. And now also, bylaw being,
It's okay, you've already done that.
yeah, have we done that? Yeah, okay. Good. So now, again, a motion put forward by Councilor Wink, seconded by Councilor Trophy. Be resolved that the council of the town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw 4208, being a bylaw authorizing the implementation of a 2020 spray program respecting the gypsy moth, and to repeal and replace bylaw number 4106, 2019. 3. Bylaw 4210, 2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of grant funding agreements between the town of Pelham and Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, relating to funding provided as follows. $49,354, Public Works Operational Review. 2, $39,534, Savings and Efficiencies Review with the City of Port Colborne, the Townships of Waynfleet and West Lincoln, and the town of Pelham. And 3, $19,425, Review of Current Information Technology Services with the Township of Waynfleet. 5, Bylaw 4211, 2020, being a bylaw to appoint Jason Longhurst and Andrew McMurtry as provincial offenses officers for the corporation of the town of Pelham. And 6, Bylaw 4214, 2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of the province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the province of Ontario, dedicated gas tax funds 2019-2020, and to repeal and replace bylaw number 4067, 2019. Any questions or comments on any of these bylaws? Councilor Trophy.
Sorry, the one, bylaw 4211, at the top says being a bylaw to appoint Belinda Menard, Jason, and Andrew. Then down below, section number 1, it says that Jason and Andrew be and are hereby appointed as municipal bylaw officers. Are we missing something in there, or?
I believe the clerk has a comment.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, originally we thought we needed to appoint Ms. Menard, but she is already appointed, so I'll take that off of the preamble. Thank you for catching that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. I will call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
new business item.
Okay. Motion put forward by Councilor Trophy, seconded by Councilor Wink. Whereas the town of Pelham, along with the global community, is experiencing a World Health Organization declared pandemic, being the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. And whereas the town of Pelham Municipal Building is closed to the walk-in public in light of this pandemic, and whereas the global economy is experiencing an unprecedented financial impact, and whereas the town of Pelham is desirous to initiate measures to ensure business continuity and to support the well-being of the residents of the town of Pelham, now therefore be it resolved that council for the town of Pelham waive the town of Pelham's penalty for non-payment of taxes or any installment for taxes or wastewater payments, and the council approves of a 1-month exemption until April 30th, 2020, at which time a further assessment of the pandemic implications will be reviewed and further recommendations will be made as necessary. Comment, questions on this motion? Not seen, no.
To the Director of Treasury, what impact would that have on us? If we, what percentage do you think that they're not going to pay their water bills or taxes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the revenue loss of interest income, the interest revenue would be about $27,000.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Trophy, did I see you hesitantly have a question?
Yeah, can you explain how you come up with that $27,000? Is that if everybody didn't pay for that 1 month?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is just based on past experience. So we just know from the revenue that what we have budgeted and what we've experienced as far as overdue accounts and the interest that we collect between the taxes that haven't been paid and the water bills that haven't been paid. It's roughly about $27,000 a month. That's where it comes from.
Thank you. I think this is something that needs to be done. There's going to be, there are a lot of people out of work right now, and there's going to be even more out of work at 11:59 tomorrow night. So I think this is the right thing for council to do. Hope we get some support.
If I may get the Director of Finance, also, if I think you should explain to council that when we collect money, if we're going to defer to, if we're going to do more, explain that we're going to need help at the regional level.
Right. So with this, by not collecting the interest revenue for 1 month, it would have the least impact to the organization. If this was carried on, let's say for a couple months, then it would have a cash flow issue to the town. Our taxes are due on April 30th. And so we receive, the towns, we collect almost $6 million on that at the end of April 30th, of which $3.5 million belongs to the town, and the rest is transferred over to the region and the school boards. So if this was carried forward for another month, then the town would not be able to pay the region their portion if people weren't paying their taxes. So this is something that we can do for a month, and then we can reevaluate that if it goes longer than a month. Right now, this has the least impact to the town, but it still helps people who right now have some financial issues.
Councilor Trophy?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you as being our regional representative as well, is there a chance that you can go to the region and ask them for the same thing that we're doing for our citizens of Pelham and deferring it out as well, and possibly the school board? We should all be coming together in unity here in helping the people of the region.
Yeah, so we haven't had a meeting since most of this came across into the North America. It is something that we have discussed on conference calls, but we have yet to sit down with regional staff and the council as a whole to see exactly what we can do at the regional level to, again, assist the residents of the region.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Stewart?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Finance. So you're saying that this is an ongoing amount, about $25,000 to $27,000 every month, even when we're not in a pandemic situation?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions? What?
Just a comment. It sounds like if everybody started paying their bills on time, we'd be in trouble. We'd be less $25,000 a month in cash flow. Am I correct?
No, we wouldn't be in trouble. We'd,
We're not in trouble, but I think we're relying on it, are we not?
No, it's just part of, ideally, the present value of money, you do want the cash up front. You always want that. It's always the best thing.
But the additional $25,000 per month is,
Yes.
we're actually counting on that money. Banking on it.
It's part of our budget. That's correct.
So if everybody pays on time, our budget's out the window.
Okay, so any other comments? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Next is closed session to recess.
Oh. Don't we usually do this after cow, though?
That's the recess, motion to recess to after cow.
Okay. Motion put forward by Councilor Trophy, seconded by Councilor Wink. Resolution to move in camera. Be it resolved that council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following the committee meeting scheduled for this evening. Any comments, questions? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried.
So we're in recess right now.
Pardon me?
So we're in recess right now. You want to go directly to cow?
So the question, oh, you know what? I'm going to have a 5-minute recess, and then we'll go into cow.
We rely on people getting speeding tickets to be aware of it. If you actually said, if we all follow the speed limit, we can travel too. Like it's a. All right, it's a very good truth. I didn't realize that in a small municipality.